following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.
10 of Africa's greatest chess players compete in Abidjan as Vivendi presents the 2018 Côte d'Ivoire Rapid and Blitz Invitational. Hello chess fans, and welcome back to St. Louis for Day 2's coverage of the 2018 Côte d'Ivoire Rapid and Blitz Invitational. My name is Ben Simon, joined as always by Grandmaster Robert Hungaski. And yesterday wasn't a runaway train as we thought it might be. Things are still a little bit equal in the field, Robert.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, we were expecting Amin to just blow through the field, and that's not what happened. I mean, at the end of the day, we had a three-way tie for first place, and Amin wasn't part of it.
Absolutely. Now let's take a look at the players that are in this event before we look at some games that have already happened earlier today. 10 players, 10 nations represented. Some of the best players in all of Africa. You can see based on FIDE rating there on the left column. 3 of the top 10 players on the continent are here in, well, not here, but in the Ivory Coast, on the Ivory Coast, playing in this Rapid and Blitz event. The universal rating system will be referenced in this event, which is quite topical because it is a Rapid and Blitz event. The universal rating system, of course, covers gameplay in all time controls. The format is as follows. So we are in the rapid phase right now, game in 25, with a 10-second delay. The players are playing 3 rounds a day, and that means after 3 days they will have completed a full round robin. Each game is worth 2 points. You get 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss, and today, of course, day 2 of Rapid, tomorrow is day 3 of Rapid. And then day 4 and day 5 will consist of Blitz, a full round robin each day. The time control is game in 5 minutes with a 3-second delay, no increment in this tournament. It's a double round robin affair. Each game is worth 1 point, and that's to put it in line with the Rapid. You see that the Rapid games are weighted, and we'll finish this up on Saturday and Sunday with Blitz. And now let's take a look at the standings after 5 rounds of Rapid have been played. Keep in mind, this tournament began several hours ago in Abidjan on the Ivory Coast, and they have played 5 rounds. Each game has been worth 2 points, and we have a tie at the top. Robert, what do you make of these standings so far?
Well, I'm very impressed with some of the lesser-known names, you could say. Some of them I've never even heard of. And after reviewing some of the actual games, you know, these guys are good.
Right.
You know? So I'm surprised that I've never heard of them before, and I'm enjoying going through these games because they're not just good, but they're very exciting.
Right. Hey, up until we started on the show, actually, Robert was going through the games of rounds 4 and 5, which were played earlier today. Let's take a look at what these players, though, are competing for, because it's not just all glory. There is some money on the line, a $15,000 prize fund, the richest prize fund in the history of quick chess on the African continent, with a top prize of $5,000. Now, earlier today, as we were saying, there were several cool games that we need to look at, several quirks as well. Robert, what did you have in mind from round 4?
So we still have a few minutes before today's round starts. So I made a little bit of a selection here of some of the games that happened today that we could review. Now, from round 4, I liked the game between Bassan Amin and one of Africa's talented junior players. You can pronounce the name.
Rakotomaharo. That was a strong guess.
Good.
Yeah.
So in this game,
well, let's hold off here for a second. There we go. We're still on the prizes, but yeah, let's if we can get the board up, because we're going to look at a game from round 4 as we see one of the leaders, Bassan Amin, taking on Rakotomaharo with the black pieces. And Fai got a little sassy in this game. Take us through and show us what happened.
Yeah, so we'll go through the opening fairly quickly because I think both players played some normal moves, got a decent position either side. Again, we see the trade of bishop for knight becoming a sort of an opening theme. I mean, a lot of the games we've covered, we've talked about this idea. And here it's actually, I approve. A bishop takes because at least we're doubling some pawns. And
that's the exception, huh?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you trade a bishop for a knight, you got to be getting something for it. It can't just be considered an equal trade. You know, like they're both worth 3, so it's okay. That's not going to cut it. So we need to get like some kind of structural damage accomplished or win some material, something. In this case, we're getting some doubled pawns. But anyway, after white took on c6, expanded on the queen side, castled, both sides completed development. But soon, after development was finished, things started to get a little bit complicated. You don't normally see the rook getting to the 7th rank so quick in the game. Usually we associate this with endgames. So white is getting active on the queen side, and now after d4 we see some of the problems about having these doubled pawns on c6. Especially these double pawns on the c file, especially this pawn on c6, because now after cd4, knight d4, there's a very nasty threat of knight takes c6. Not that easy to deal with. The game, black brought the queen out, queen d6, knight a3, and we see that the knights start harassing the queen. We've heard of this concept, I'm sure, when we were first starting out, that we shouldn't bring our queen out too soon because it can become vulnerable, and these two knights in the center are going to do a great job at harassing the black queen. So now after rook b7, white traded and played knight c4, and we see that even though black has the bishop pair, they don't seem to be participating so much yet. Now this can change. Remember, the bishops are always ready to spring into action, but as long as we have these pawns on c6 and f6, we have time. So after queen b4, b3, knight d8, knight e2, c5, we see that black is being mindful of his bishops, bringing at least one of them into the game. And after queen d7, bishop takes e4, bishop d2. We get a very important moment in the game.
Threatening the queen.
Threatening the queen. I mean, whenever your queen is under attack, you should consider it a pretty important moment in the game. Now, normally we would want to move our queen away, but that doesn't seem so easy here because our queen is trapped. So did we lose our queen? Well, no. Black throws in this in-between move, bishop c6, which turns out to be a terrible blunder because after queen a7, the queen is still trapped, and black resigned. Now, at first I thought this is actually what black had planned for, because after queen b5, since the queen's no longer on d7, our queen's no longer trapped. But the knights start chasing the queen, and after queen b4, knight d5, queen b5, knight c7, the knights have sort of crawled their way up the board and trapped the black queen.
I think she's actually trapped now.
She is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I think that's why black resigned. But it was a nice, I guess, case study on what happens when you bring your queen out a little bit too soon. But just to defend black a little bit, because I think black had played well, could have tried bishop f5 here. And this would have made a difference. Because after queen to a7, we can go queen b5 and knight c3, and our bishop is not in the way on c6, so the queen can actually retreat to d7 or e8. And we don't lose the queen, which is always nice. So that's the big highlight, I think, from round 4. Would you like to look at a game from round 5?
Absolutely, I'd like to look at a game.
I was hoping you would.
It's important to note that with that loss, Rakotomaharo gave up a +1, very slight lead in the field, and now the Grandmaster Doctor from Egypt, Bassem Amin, is one of the leaders. And so, yeah, we are now in rapid round 5, but what game are you looking at here, Robert?
Well, I think today might be the day of Amin, because...
Another Amin game, eh?
Yeah, he is catching up. I mean, we saw him trailing the field after day 1, but after this nice win, and after the win in round 5, he is among the leaders. So I wanted to show you not a whole game, but actually a position. On move 29, Amin sacrifices the exchange. Rook takes d3, queen takes d3, rook d8, and after queen e2, queen d6. And in in exchange, I guess, for the exchange, can you say it that way? Well, I'm going to. You get this tremendous pressure on the d file. You're going to get the knight back on d2, and after a couple of moves, b4, and white threw into towel. Because after the queen moves, even though we're focusing on the d file, all of a sudden after b3, this knight on a2 is completely dominated, and white loses even more material. So a couple of big wins by Amin, and he is on fire today. So he's the guy to watch.
It's important to note that if you'd like to follow along the games with us, you can do so at chess24.com. This is the CIV Rapid and Blitz Invitational. Join us at chess24.com. AfricanChessNews.com, want to give them a big shout out. Yesterday they had full coverage of the first day, and just the best way to read up on any rounds you may have missed if you don't have time to watch these great broadcasts here from St. Louis. So what else do we have, Robert? We have about 5 minutes until the start of round number 6 of the Rapids.
All right. Well, games are not lacking, so we have plenty to choose from.
We have content.
We do have content, yes. So there was a game by a player we interviewed yesterday, Kayonde. Is that right?
Andrew Kayonde,
Andrew Kayonde, yes. That I thought was quite interesting. Now,
round 4?
Yeah, round 4.
Round 4.
So let me see if I can...
It's a good round for Andrew.
Yeah. Here we go. Now this was a crazy game. Is this round 4? Yeah, right?
Yes, that's right.
So in this game, even though we had a completely different opening, the position sort of reminded me of the Amin game we looked at. After just some pretty normal opening play, I mean, both sides simply developed, castled, and started fighting for the center. White played this idea, queen d2, bishop h6. Now, in the Rasalimo, this is a very normal plan as well. Usually when you trade off one of your bishops for a knight, what you want to do is you want to trade off the other bishop for one of your opponent's bishops. Do you know what this is going to accomplish? It's actually something very important. What happens when you give your bishop up for a knight? What does your opponent get? Come on.
Well, I mean, if it's at the beginning, it'd be a bishop pair.
Yeah, the bishop pair. And the bishop pair is a huge strategic advantage. So it makes sense to try to trade off your last bishop for one of your opponent's bishop pair. In this case, we still have our light square bishop, so we're not really afraid of our opponent's bishop pair, but we are pretty interested in taking control over the dark squares because that is going to create some serious king safety issues for black. And after d5, e5, knight e4, queen f4, I think even though Kayonde won this game, he was in a little bit of pressure here. After bishop takes, queen takes, f6, rook e1, f5, white's position is very, very good and very dangerous for black. White played knight f5, and I think this might be rushing things a little bit. There is one piece of white's that's not really participating yet, and I think maybe knight h4 would have been an improvement. Because when we take on f5, we want to make sure that after g takes f5, we can sort of reload and put another knight on f5 and threaten checkmate on g7. So I was wondering maybe after knight f8 how to proceed. And in this position, if we take on f5, takes, knight takes, black might be able to play e6 and make it just in time to defend g7 along the 7th rank with the queen. So we can actually throw in this move e6 with the idea of following up with knight takes f5, and after we take everything, we'll land the knight on f5 and have a very nasty threat of queen g7 checkmate. So just to sort of give you an example, if rook d6, knight takes f5, takes, takes, and now you're going to be under a lot of pressure. I mean, you're basically getting checkmated. I think maybe knight takes e6 here, and I don't know, maybe a rook lift here with rook e3, maybe take on e4 first.
So at this point, I'm just wondering how in the world white lost.
Yeah, that is a good question. So he took on f5 right away, And after pawn takes, queen e6 check, king h8, takes, knight g5. Now usually the queen and knight are the deadliest team around. Together they can do all sorts of neat tricks that, for example, queen and bishop can't do as well. So it's generally considered that queen and knight is better than queen and bishop. But after knight f8, this knight is going to play a very important defensive role. It protects h7, and it pretty much holds black's position together. After knight f7, king g7 takes, rook takes, and it seems like white's attack is fizzling out. I mean, black has two minor pieces for a rook. If things get a little bit out of control, maybe with rook e3, rook g3, we always have the option of playing knight g6. But at the moment, we have to deal with the threat on our queen, like we did in the last game. Blundering your queen is never a good thing. Notice that here, black can't take the queen because after knight takes e6, we have a nasty little fork. So I think this is where the game slowly starts to slip away from white's control. Because after rook takes, queen g4, king h8, all of a sudden this king doesn't look like it's in too much trouble. f4, queen b6, f5, cd4, f6, and now after d3, black gets a very nice protected passed pawn on d3. This should at least serve to distract white's pieces from the attack. King h1, knight g6, h4, rook g8, f7, rook f8, h5, knight takes e5, and those white pawns are dropping like flies. So queen g5, queen e6, rook f5, knight f7, and knight f6. And now you're going to lose the pawn on f7, and look at, this is kind of strange to see, right? We don't usually see 4 central pawns for one side.
Yeah.
So it looks like black has pretty good control over the center, with 4 central pawns against none. And these pawns start rolling. Knight takes h5, queen d4, knight g7, rook e5, queen h3, king g1, queen g3.
Oh.
And white resigned. Because if you move king to h1, your rook is hanging, and if you defend your rook, your king is hanging. Queen f2 checkmate. So a nice counterattack by Kayonde. All right.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we have just seen on chess24.com that the round is underway on the Ivory Coast at the Hotel Tiama. So let's take a look at some of the action that's happening in round 6. Let's go around the horn and see what... Do we have all the games yet? Yeah, it looks like we do. All right.
So here we have Slim Belkhodia against Kenny Solomon. And it looks like another aggressive game. But I wouldn't feel too bad about black's position. I think we were talking about a similar position yesterday, where black usually goes rook e8 and f8, tucks the bishop away, and slowly completes its development with moves like bishop d7, queen c7. Of course, our knight is hanging, so we can't really dwell on these vague ideas too much. But here, maybe we can just go knight takes d3, queen takes d3, and now rook e8, followed by bishop f8. I don't think black should have a lot of problems in this position. Should we see what the other positions
let's keep
look like?
on going, yeah.
All right. So what do we have here?
This is
Huh?
certainly not a draw already. The DGT is showing that it's a draw.
Is this game over? They're just getting started.
No, it can't be. It cannot be a draw at this point.
Is there like a 30-move draw rule in this tournament?
Yes.
Ah.
Actually, there's. I need to double check. It may actually be different for the Blitz rounds.
Oh, okay.
It might be like a 20 move or 40 move or something. I feel like I read something different. I'll check up on that for you.
All right. Well,
this tournament is exactly the same format as the Rapid and Blitz tournaments in the Grand Chess Tour, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So that is the inspiration behind this event.
Yeah. So in either case, whether this has ended in the draw, which we don't think it has, the game is just getting started. It's really hard to make an assessment here. I mean, both sides are just going to play normal moves. I'm guessing. What happened here? Oh, maybe this was a draw because
They
There was
did
like a
threefold?
repetition of, yeah,
What?
yeah, threefold.
Why would you do something like this at this juncture?
I don't know. I mean, you play a Rapid or a Blitz tournament, it's all or nothing. So maybe this was a draw, because a threefold repetition is usually considered an exception, right?
Yeah. So this is a draw then.
All right.
And this game, we were
Moving
talking
on.
about Arthur Ssegwanyi and David Silver. They're both middle of the road right
Yeah.
now. So
All right, so let's see what we have here. Oh, this is my guy,
there he is.
Amin Bassem. I'm getting excited about his games. I mean, I didn't know, I had seen some games of his throughout the years, and I think he's roughly my age. So I might have
He's my age too.
We're the same age,
Yeah. Oh my God.
and we're both wearing lapel pins. That's
Look
pretty-
at that pin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, where
it's
is
a nice
it?
pin. It's on your right. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot where it is.
Good pin right there.
Oh, there it is,
Got
okay.
my Grand Chess Tour
Yeah,
ones.
we have so much in common. It's crazy.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
anyway,
let's,
look at the eyes of the cerebral assassin of chess right there. I'm talking about Bassem Amin there on
that's
the left.
intimidating. I mean, he's got that. Have you ever heard of the tall stare?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of that going on.
Yes.
Scary. Anyway, Amin is, from what I understand, a bit of a specialist, an expert in the King's Indian attack. And that's what we got in this game. Normally in the King's Indian attack, White is hoping that Black will castle really early, which is something you generally shouldn't do. Because if you do it too soon, then your opponent knows exactly where he should attack you. Whereas if you keep the king in the center a little bit, you keep him guessing, where's the king going to go? King side, queen side, maybe in the center. So that's what Black is doing here.
Clear out the entire back rank, and you
Right.
never know which way.
Exactly. So usually in the King's Indian attack, White wants to put this pawn on e5, and that's going to be sort of the wedge that is going to drive the attack, because it's going to take away the key f6 square, where you usually want to put a knight to defend your king side. But here, since Black didn't castle, White's kind of waiting. He's going to make some moves like a3, b4, knight f1, hoping that soon Black will castle and play e5. So this game is really going to depend on where Black puts his king. But it's really early in the game still, so hard to tell. Moving on?
Absolutely.
All right.
Remember, these games are game in 25 with a 10-second delay, so while we're still early on, it won't be like that for long, that's for sure.
So now we have Hadouche Mohammed, is that right?
I've been saying Mohammed Hadouche, but it's tough to tell at this point.
Well, it sounds like a French-inspired name, and I always see that little accent on the E, like Hadouche.
Oh, is that on the end of his name?
I don't know.
I haven't seen that yet.
I'm gonna make it up and say that it is because it sounds really sophisticated. So Hadouche against Oladapo Adu.
The Nigerian player.
Yep. So let's see what we have in this game. So Black has the bishop pair, and he has more central pawns. So normally this would make me very happy, but White does have a lead in development and this really weird looking knight on h5. I mean, how did that knight get there? So Black is going to have to complete this development somehow and get this knight into the game, but I don't know. I'm liking White's position here. I don't think it's going to be easy to do both things at the same time. Let's say this game, I think, went h6, bishop e3. So how is Black going to fix these problems? Is he trying to go g5 and then bring the knight to g7 and e6? That seems very optimistic. I'd be a little bit scared. Maybe he's just trying to get the bishop out of g5 so that he can go bishop e7, castle, and if this knight gets in trouble, just drop back to f6. That makes a lot more sense. I don't know why I even consider g5. Yeah, so maybe this is okay for Black. Because if you go bishop h4, then knight f4 is coming. And this knight looks very active on f4. So we have to go bishop e3, bishop e7. Now, if I'm White here, I know time is not on my side. Because if I allow Black to go castle kingside, knight f6, he's just going to have the bishop pair, more central pawns, or maybe that open b file is going to give him some counterplay. So I got to do something fast. I'm thinking maybe c5. So this is going to break up Black's pawn structure. I'm also going to be trading a non-central pawn for a central pawn. So strategically speaking, there is some logic behind this. And after d takes c5, I think I have pretty good chances of getting this pawn back. For example, with knight a4, rook c1, and eventually bishop takes c5. Now, a little while ago, we were talking about this concept that when you trade one of your bishops for a knight, and you leave your opponent with the bishop pair, you usually want to trade off this bishop that you have left for one of your opponent's bishops. So this idea of c5 is going to help me carry out that strategic goal. For example, if black goes castles, I can go bishop takes c5. Let's say black throws in this move, knight f4, queen e3, takes, knight takes. I'm pretty happy as white. I took away your bishop pair, I ruined your pawn structure, I created this weak isolated pawn on c6, which I can very easily exploit with rook ac1, and overall this just looks like a good position for white. So I think the game so far has progressed until bishop e3. I suppose black is going to go bishop e7, and if white doesn't play the c5 move, very soon he can find himself in trouble. So
that was the fourth game, right?
Yeah, there's one more. You want to see it?
Game. Let's do it.
All right. What do we have here? Andrew Kayonde, sort of the Cinderella story of the tournament.
The 6-time Zambian national champion.
That's right. Yesterday you said 4 times.
Yeah, you'll check your sheet. I changed it. 6.
You changed it?
6,
nice.
not 4, yes.
Okay. But would it be fair to say that he's the Cinderella story of the tournament? I mean, this is who I had in mind when I was telling you, like, there's a lot of players that I've never heard of before, that when you look through their games, you know, they're tough. I mean, he almost won a game against Basen Amin yesterday.
Right. And I mean, he's trailing the leader of the tournament just in terms of like rating strength, about 300 points.
Yeah.
With all of that factored in, I think absolutely Cinderella story.
Yeah.
Would be a good assessment.
So what do we have here? I mean, first thing that stands out is bishop pair, right? So what does black have to offset it? Let's see the pawns. Both sides have, what, 7 pawns? No, black has 8 pawns. So black is up a pawn. Is that right? Am I counting right? I am. Yeah. I'm getting confirmation that I am counting right. So black has an extra pawn. This should make up for the bishop pair, because if you ever try to get this pawn back...
Wait, what? Oh, wait. I'm literally counting pawns right now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I'm getting confirmation that I do have problems counting. So it is 7 against 7.
This is like one time that I'm not proving to myself I'm not going crazy. Yes.
No, you're right. I am
so
not,
what's the trade-off
I do
here?
not
He's
have
got
a
the bishop
future
pair for what?
as a math professor, I think. So this is going to change things a little bit, because this pawn on c4 looks kind of weak. Let me get rid of these annoying highlights I made. So we're going to run the risk of losing this pawn, and we're also going to run the risk of getting crushed on dark squares, because we see this fianchettoed king, but there's something missing.
A bishop.
Yeah, the fianchettoed bishop. So if I was white, I wouldn't get distracted with the c4 pawn. I would maybe try to capture it later on in the game if the opportunity arises. But I'm much more tempted to go for this king. So maybe with a move like queen d2, h4, and h5, and try to start jabbing at this fianchetto. Maybe with moves like bishop h6 and h4, h5, queen f4, I can start bothering you a little bit. Maybe
I used to think when I was teaching beginners how to play that whenever you push the g-pawn and you're going to castle, if you're not going to fill it with a bishop, it's kind of like you've created a tree that's rotting from the center.
I've never heard that
progressively weak than it would be otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fianchetto is a double-edged sword. I mean, it's very nice as long as you have that bishop there, because, as we said earlier, you know, bishops, you want them pointing at the center, but you don't want them physically in the center, because they can get attacked quite easily. Now here, this would be an exception on d5. This bishop's actually doing very well in the center, because there's just no way to attack it, right? This pawn on c4 makes it so that white can't play c4 himself, and moves like bishop f3 would actually help us achieve a piece trade that we are willing to embrace, right? We want to get rid of white's bishop pair. So if white plays a move like bishop f3 here, well, it's actually black's move. So let's say I go knight c6. If you try to get rid of my bishop on d5 with bishop f3, I'm going to be pretty happy, because then my queen's going to go to d5. Maybe I can go something like f6. And now actually I have some pretty good control over the light squares. Overall, I think Andrew Kayande's position is considerably better, because of course he's not forced to make this terrible trade. Instead, against knight c6, why not h4? Unless e5 is possible? No, e5 is not a big deal. So yeah, I would go h4, h5, maybe throwing queen d2. So I'm not so sure about the move order yet, but these are the two big factors in my plan.
It's not midnight yet for Cinderella.
Huh?
It's not midnight yet for Cinderella.
No, not at all. Not even close.
Hey, we've got to go to Bassem Amin's game with Mokhlis Elanani.
Okay.
It looks like Bassem's in trouble.
Really?
Just from a quick glance.
All right. Let me pull that game up.
And they're on move 15.
So what happened here? Last time we saw this game, I think we were at queen e2. And at this point, black played bishop a6, which makes sense, putting some pressure on d3, right? e5, also consistent with white's idea, hoping that black will castle kingside. And this is called castling into the attack. It's not something you generally want to do.
You can tell from the name.
Yeah, yeah. h6. And this is very interesting, because we can appreciate the advantage of having left the king in the center. Now, black is preparing to play g5. And after that, go knight g6. So the pawn that's usually an asset for white is going to become a liability. Because if we've castled kingside, going h6, g5 looks very risky. It would just weaken our king. But since our king is in the center, we can pretty much go crazy on the king side and then put our king on the other side of the board. So if black is able to get g5, knight g6, it's going to be almost impossible for white to defend the pawn on e5, because black is also going to be threatening to push his pawn to g4. And who's going to defend e5? It's not going to be easy. And it's not like we can play d4, because this guy on a6 is keeping an eye on our queen.
This looks like a chain reaction of bad.
Yeah, yeah. So usually you want to wait till your opponent castles kingside to go e5. So after h4, so this is stopping g5, or is it? Boom, g5 anyway. H takes g5, h takes, knight takes, and now we take on e5. So we didn't win the pawn on e5, but we did make a good pawn trade, because what ended up happening? We traded our g pawn, which is not a central pawn, for the e5 pawn, which is. Not only that, if white were to trade queens here, things would spiral out of control, because after knight takes, now this pawn on d3 is very weak. And if d4, knight d3, and now the pawn on d4 is weak. So this is sort of a chain reaction, like you were saying. But Amin had something in mind and played knight d to e4. What? Like, crazy move, right?
You're just putting your knight in the path of attack.
Yeah, so what happens if black takes this pawn? I mean, what is his idea? I guess he wants to go bishop f4. And if you play queen d5, oh, look at this. D takes e4, threatening the queen and the bishop. So you basically have to take my queen. And now I take your queen. And your knight on c6 is under attack, and your bishop on e2 is under attack.
Oh, very nice.
So it's a very nice tactic. Yeah. I don't know, though. I mean, of course, queen d5 would really be cooperating with your opponent. Maybe black has a better move. I don't think e takes d3 works, because, I mean, can I just take on e5, or can I do something like bishop takes? But then you go d takes e2, bishop takes g7, rook g8. I don't know. So if I take here, you take, takes, rook g8, and it would seem like you're going to take one of these pieces, but after bishop f6 I can protect everything, and at least I'm not losing any more material. But nevertheless, this looks kind of interesting for black, because his pawn on e2 looks very strong. Although white does have the bishop pair. But I don't know. This looks a little bit suspicious to me. I don't know. Is there something better for white after, oops, e takes d3? I'm wondering what black has in mind after knight d4. Maybe he didn't see knight d4. I know I probably wouldn't. Oh, look at this. After bishop takes c6, check, knight takes c6, I can create a discovery on your queen.
Oh, and then there's
and then also threaten your knight. And there's no good way for you to retreat the queen and defend the knight, right? Because you can't go queen d5 because that pawn on e6 is pinned. So everything I told you about keeping the king in the center, you may want to forget that, at least in this position. So
it's a little too late. You got to know when to do it and when to not.
well, and also, you know, chess is a struggle, so you can have your own strategy, and it's a legitimate strategy, and your opponent is going to try to make life hard for you.
Right.
And I think that's what Amin is trying to do by playing this knight d4 move, sort of highlight the fact that you haven't castled. So it's an extreme measure trying to take advantage of the most important chess theme in the whole game, which is king safety. So yeah, do we have any more moves from this game? I don't think so, right? I think...
so the last move I have, yeah, is 15
it's knight d4,
still.
right? So maybe black isn't forced to take the knight. I mean, you probably have to take the knight, though, because otherwise bishop f4 is coming. So after bishop f4... e takes d3. Maybe that's the blunder, right? Maybe we should just retreat the queen, because queen takes d5 is bad, e takes d3 is bad. Let's just get the queen out of here. But maybe he's just going to go knight takes e4, and now after the queen moves again, is there knight d6?
Absolutely knight d6.
Yeah. And this is going to be one of those intuitive piece sacrifices, because I don't necessarily see a forced win for white, but we do have a king that's stranded in the center, because we can't go to c7 because that would just expose our king to some discoveries. But also this knight doesn't look that stable on d6. Usually when you thrust your knight into the opponent's side of the board, you got to be sure what you're doing. Normally you want that knight on an outpost as some kind of guarantee that it'll be stable there. Otherwise, you can find that very soon it's going to become a target. Because, talking about chain reactions, this knight is protected by this bishop. So if something happens to this bishop, then this knight is going to suffer the consequences. All right.
So what's your assessment of the game after 14 and a half moves have been played?
14 and a half moves. So
white's made the 15th, right? But not black.
all right, so after knight d4, you mean?
Yes. No, oh, pardon me, more moves have been played.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have d takes e4,
Yeah?
bishop f4,
Oh, okay.
queen d5.
Queen d5. Now, I thought, did we consider this a blunder? Were we talking about this move? Maybe. Yeah, no, I think we didn't look at this exact move order. We were looking at
I don't remember.
ED.
Mm-hmm.
So, bishop f4. We were just looking at ED and queen f6. So queen d5 does make some sense, because if white tries to open up the diagonals for the bishop, we can just retreat back to d7, and the queen's going to help out protecting the knight on c6. And again, we have our knight sort of wandering about our opponent's camp. And even though it's not under attack yet, it's not particularly stable either. What's going on in this position? I think that, taking into account that after bishop takes e4, queen d7, there's no direct threat. Maybe the move is knight takes e4, but then it's d3 hanging. The reason I like knight takes e4 is because I'm threatening a discovery here with knight d6. So if you move your queen away with queen d7, again, I can try to throw in this check, but now you can go to the other side, right? King f8. So this is the nice thing about having a king in the center. You can sort of dodge those punches as they start coming in. But I would assess this position as white being on the edge of the cliff, you know. It looks like he might be able to deliver a knockout blow, but my impression is that black has plenty of defensive resources to hold it together. And yeah, this is where the game is at right now, after queen d5. What about the other games? Let's see what's happening here. Hadouche, as we've established his name is.
I guess I'll go along with that.
Yeah, all right. So the last time we looked at this game, we had seen bishop e3 with the idea of going c5. So instead of bishop e7, black played bishop e6. And white went rook ac1. I think it's definitely a step in the same direction that we were taking. But now after rook d8, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to play c5 because we've got these x-rays on our queen. Maybe c5 should have been considered right away, just giving up the pawn. But let's see what happened. Rook c1, rook d8, h3, queen b8, and c5. All right, so pretty much the same idea, but the difference is that now by including the moves rook d8 and bishop e6, black doesn't take on this shattered pawn structure with dc5, but plays in the center. Queen b5, takes. Trading queens looks kind of dangerous because in an endgame, when your opponent has two central pawns and you don't have any, and he has the bishop pair and you don't, trading queens is only going to highlight those factors. Now here maybe things aren't so easy because this knight on h5 is not participating, and perhaps white is going to have enough time to snatch up that bishop pair with knight c7, knight takes e6, because we're also threatening to take on a7. So this is called compensating a strategic weakness with, you know, some concrete variations. So you can't just say, oh, I have the bishop pair, I'm better, and then get mated into moves. That doesn't work like that. So after d4, bishop d2, this is where the game is at right now. And this is kind of unpleasant because even though we have a nice position, we have a pawn hanging on a7, a pawn hanging on e5, a misplaced knight on h5. So optically, black's position was very good. I mean, we had a lot of things of abstract value, like bishop pair, center, but we can't really hold down that position. That being said, I mean, if I had to give up one pawn, I would much rather give up a7 than e5. But maybe I can get away with this move a6. Maybe not. Because I was hoping that if you go knight c7, king d7, and you take my bishop, all of a sudden I've managed not to lose a pawn and to activate my king in the endgame. So actually, this king on d5, for example, would be quite nice. But
besides
yeah.
a6, e4 worth considering?
So e4, and what's going to happen after knight takes pawn? Because you don't have enough time to play a6. I think I can go either knight c7 check. Well, if knight takes e6, f takes e6, these guys are going to be hanging. But I think I can just do check, and after king d7, for example, knight takes, pawn takes. I've kind of made your pawns ugly, and I can just consolidate my position with moves like bishop e3, rook fd1. This is starting to look close to winning for white.
Yeah.
Yeah? So, I don't know. Black's position is not so convincing anymore.
It's been a tough tournament so far for Adu. He's sitting at 1 point for a possible 10.
Okay.
Grandmaster from Algeria, Mohamed Adouche.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's Adouche. Maybe it's a silent H.
Oh, maybe. So you're like improving on my version. I like that.
We're adding different elements here.
Okay.
There's no way to tell right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he may be on the road to another 2-pointer.
Let's check up on our friend Andrew Kayonde.
Oh, what a good friend he is.
Yeah. I liked the interview with him. He was really upbeat.
Great guy.
Yeah. So where did we leave off on this game? Bishop d5, castles. Yeah, so we had this position, and I was talking about the move knight c6. And, oh, actually, it wasn't castles. I was talking about the move h4, h5. Trying, is that right? Or was g2 hanging the whole time? Or maybe I had castled, and I was playing h4 anyway. I would do that. Yeah, that's right. So, after queen d7, rook b1, queen c6. This is an interesting idea by Black, because he really wants us, well, he would love us to play a move like bishop takes f3, and after bishop takes, queen takes, pawn takes. Because now as Black, we don't really have to worry about our weak dark squares. We usually don't get mated in the endgame, at least not so easily. And we've managed to shatter white's king side. So even if we lose the pawn, the b pawn, I think we can get a lot of compensation. For example, with a move like b6, if takes, maybe rook takes. Can I do something like a knight d7? And if rook b7, I wanted to do knight f6. So that if you take here, I have knight d5. What do you think of this position when you look at it? It's just my way of priming you to count the pawns because I'm not feeling confident about my counting
1, 2, 3, 4,
abilities.
5, 6 for white. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, as an elementary thinker, I would say that the G pawn for white looks a little misplaced, but I would still strongly prefer white.
Really? So I think this
Am
is...
I off base here, Robert?
I think this is almost winning for Black.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so close, but
Not close at all.
not that close.
No.
So I am down 2 pawns, but where are those 2 pawns? I mean, this is one, and it looks terrible. I mean, this rook is going to take it sooner rather than later. This knight is creating some very concrete threats. I mean, it's like a triple fork, right? On the rook, the bishop, and the pawn on c3. And we have a live c-pawn. I mean, as soon as we take on c3, that guy's going to start rolling. So in order to avoid losing material, you would have to do something like rook e4, and then I could already start chopping down some pawns. Knight takes c3, or maybe rook takes a2, just to keep my knight centralized. This would be, I think, a nightmare for white. So that's just one illustrative variation of what I would be looking for in this position as Black. But let's see what happened in the game. Rook e1, knight d7, bishop f1. So not trading these bishops, that's usually a good idea. And look at this, tucking the bishop away for later. Very nice. h4, better late than never. b6, takes, rook b2. Rook a3 and rook b e2. This is where we're at in the game. Honestly, I think Black has improved his position tremendously from the last time we discussed it, because first of all, he completed all his development. He opened up the A file, exposing the weakness. Oops, am I going too far with the arrow or too short? Anyway, this pawn on A2 is weak. And H4 happened, but it happened kind of late, and I don't think this is going to amount to much of an attack after H5. So I think Black has some concrete threats here, and White is going to have to play very accurately to keep the balance. So I think this game is trending in Black's favor. But as we saw in the previous round, we saw a game where Kayonde played this great counter-attacking game. So definitely Black shouldn't be counting his chickens yet.
Another game I think we should switch to is the Grandmaster game of the day, or of the round, Belhodia versus Solomon. Kenny's in some good shape right now.
Really?
Yes. So Kenny has the black pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and engines are saying -5 for him.
-5. Okay, so we have quite a few moves from the last time we saw this game, which was after F4. So I had said after knight takes d3, queen takes d3, rook e8, Black seemed to be doing okay, but in the game we saw this queen check first, and after king h1, then knight takes d3, and knight g4. So very aggressive. I think this is the style of the tournament. I mean, even though we have 10 players from 10 different countries, they all like to play quite aggressively, so that's fun for us.
And it's fun for us also. I mean, it's a window into something, into a group of people we don't usually get to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So knight g4 threatening a very nasty little fork here on f2, queen f3, and f5. E takes f5, bishop takes, h3, knight f6, g4. So this is one of the dangers when you advance your minor pieces too far into your opponent's camp. You run the risk of getting chased away. So like we see now with h3, g4. However, I think in this case, it is not without danger for White, because the pawns you're moving forward are the pawns that are also protecting your king. So bishop e6, b3, rook e8. Now, I am quite excited by the prospect of putting my bishops on d8 and d7, getting out of the way of the rooks, because if these two rooks are allowed to operate freely along the E and F files, I think White's position might become very dangerous. So bishop e3, queen a5, f5, bishop f7. See, I would have jumped at the chance of playing bishop c8 and saving this bishop for later. But maybe Black has something else in mind. Maybe he's trying to go d5, something along those lines. Knight d7, knight g3, c5, bishop g1, knight e5, queen e3, bishop g5. Wow. So the idea is that, well, this is what happened. Queen takes c3, f6, bishop g6, bishop h2, rook takes f6. So was bishop h2 a blunder here, maybe? Because after rook takes f6, the rook on a1 is hanging. So maybe White needed to prepare this bishop h2 move. I don't know, with a move like, can we go something like, oh no, but wait a minute, this knight is hanging on g3. No wonder. Huh. Maybe this isn't so easy anymore. Look at this. White chased away the black minor pieces and exposed his king, and now we can't move the rook away from a1 because the knight is hanging. We can't move the knight because h3 is also hanging. So we have to defend this knight on g3. But after bishop h2, rook takes f6. If we take here, I think we're going to run into a nasty in-between move. Queen takes a1 check.
Instead of bishop h2, is White just forced to maybe try to trade off queens, like queen e3?
Yeah, this is a good idea. Magnus Carlsen calls it pulling the emergency brake. So after...
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, queen takes, bishop takes. I'm wondering if there's not a discovery to target this bishop. For example, something like knight takes c4. And after b takes c4, rook takes e3. You traded queens, but you're not out of the woods yet. I mean, I'm threatening to take your knight. Again, you can't move the knight because the pawn is hanging. I'm going to take on f6. And the position opens up. And when the position opens up, the bishop should be better than this knight on g3. And this knight just is having a hard time, whether it's a middle game or an end game.
Now
So-
officially we can say that Kenny Solomon has clinched 2 points from this game.
Oh, wow.
The
So
winner.
he won. Wow, excellent. All right, so let's see the other games.
Mohamed Hadouche is
What about
still
the-
looking good.
Let me go to the Amin game, because I see we have some moves here.
Oh, yes.
And that was a crazy game. So after queen d5, d takes e4, we had looked at this. And we saw that bishop takes e2, e takes d5, and later d takes c6. But now queen takes a6. Wow, what is this? Queen h5. So black is up a piece. Queen b7. Rook c8. Black is up a piece, but this queen side seems to be under siege, right? This queen snuck into b7, and I'm worried that maybe black is going to have his knights tied down. If I'm able to get like bishop d6 and e5 in, I don't know. Maybe that takes too long. So white played e5 right away. Now, are we threatening anything in this position?
Oh, my eyes are looking to the bishop on g2.
Yeah, but if bishop takes c6, of course we wouldn't go knight takes c6, because then the rook would be hanging. But after bishop c6, we just go rook takes c6, and we're threatening queen h1 checkmate. So we can't just give up this
Right.
bishop unless it's for something really, really good. But look at this. Now black just castled. Move 20, and black castles. Now, I would be very proud of a situation like this. You know, black held out on castling until it was absolutely necessary. We shouldn't forget that castling is a passive defensive move, so you should only do it if it's necessary. Otherwise, there's tons of other productive things that you can come up with. And here, I'm just sensing that very soon white's just going to be down a piece, because this king is looking awfully safe on g8 now. Rook a d1, so trying to go for rook d7, rook b8, queen a6, so kicking the queen out of that annoying b7 square. And now knight takes e5. I don't know, this position seems to be almost collapsing for white. If black is able to go knight f3, we're going to have to give up our g2 bishop, and there goes all our compensation. Although maybe still the rook on b8 is hanging, so we shouldn't jump to conclusions yet. But I think, I don't know, is black winning here? I can always just play knight 7 to g6, right? Because if rook d7, knight f3 doesn't make much sense, because after bishop takes, queen takes, white can just take on e7. But I can just go knight g6, getting my knight out of the attack, attacking your bishop on f4, and if you give up the bishop pair, well, now I'm just really happy, right? Because that was the essence of your compensation. After rook takes a7, I can probably play something like knight f3, forcing you to weaken the position of your king by giving up this fianchetto bishop. Or maybe I don't even need to rush. I can just play rook fd8, bring my rook to the open d file. Somehow I'm just tempted to take this bishop away from you. Yeah, this is not looking good for Amin. Let's see the other games. Do we have the... You were mentioning that the Hadouche? Is that how we're doing it?
Hadouche and Adu, yeah. Hadouche is looking really good right now
Okay.
with the white
So
pieces.
where did we leave this game off? Oh, this was that Rosalimo. Okay, so we were looking at the position after bishop d2, where all of black's pawns are hanging. Not all of them, just two of them. But it's two.
They're important.
Yeah, but they're, even if it was just one, it would still be important. So rook c8, knight takes e5, and bishop takes c5, b4. So okay, black figured e5 is a lost cause. I'll just trade it off for c5, try to get my king out of the center. But I'm actually not that worried about the king. I'm more worried about this knight not participating. So if I had another move, I would just go knight f6. But understandably, if we castle, we connect the rooks, and since we're fighting for an open file, connecting the rooks is going to be pretty important. So I would be castling not because of my king, but rather because I want to connect the rooks. So don't say, like, you know, tonight when you're talking to the guys, be like, you know, he just wanted to put his king in a safe place and castle. That's actually, I could also go king e7 maybe and achieve the same goal while keeping the king close to the center, because in endgames that's usually a good idea. So b4, bishop e7, knight c7. Oh, ooh, have to give up the exchange. Was there no choice? Like bishop c5, because if I go bishop b6, then you go knight d6 and you fork me there. Huh. It's like, if I move the bishop, I lose the exchange. That's basically what it comes down to. But maybe, can I do this? That way, if you go bc5, I go a b5. And I kind of keep things under control. Maybe not very much, but I don't know. Actually, this doesn't look so bad for black.
I must be missing something here. Why can't the king, the black king, just move instead of giving up the exchange?
So after bishop e7 here, well, if you go to f8, that's not going to work out very well, because after knight takes e6, f takes e6, rook takes c8. It's a miracle that it's not checkmate, but
Right.
you'll have to go bishop d8 and lose a ton of material here. Yeah. The other option would be to go to d8, but I think there you're going to have problems on the opposite side of the board, because now I can fork you here. So I'm just going to drive you insane with these knights. You know, forks here, forks there, forks everywhere.
It's just a room full of forks.
Yeah.
No one wants that.
Nope. So I'm guessing black's only move here might have been a6. The game went bishop e7. I guess black figured I'll just cut my losses, give up the exchange. And maybe he thought after bishop d6, you know, he's going to get some of this material back. But after rook takes a7, if you take on e5, I check you and I take your rook. And then I have two protected passed pawns on the queen side. This should be an easy win. So castles, knight c6, d3, bishop e3, knight f6. This position indeed does look busted for black. Knight a5, bishop b5, rook b7, rook b8. Oh. And usually if you have to trade rooks, you're going to be out of counterplay. So all right, let's see how this game went. Takes on d3. White is up what? An exchange and a pawn? Yeah, this is game over. Check, bishop c5, bishop e5, knight b7, bishop d7. So this is where the game is at. I think this is a lost position for black. Hopeless? Probably. Material imbalance is just too great, and I don't think the bishop pair is going to be enough to compensate it. Especially because it's not just an exchange, but it's this pawn that has great potential to queen.
Right.
All right, do we have any other games that
Well, I gotta say, if Hadouche wins this, we should interview him
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
and ask him how to say his name.
Are you going to let me ask him some questions?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, all right.
Wait, did you want to ask questions yesterday?
I did, and I did ask questions.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I thought you did.
Yeah.
You may want to ask more.
I don't know, but maybe I thought like you didn't like my questions, and you weren't going to let me ask questions today.
You can ask whatever questions you want.
Really?
This is
All right.
a wide open international broadcast. We're all having a good time.
All right, I got some questions.
Okay.
So, is the Kayonde game over?
Doesn't appear to be.
No, but we have a lot of new moves. So, let's see. After rook b to e2, black went e6, queen c1, rook a8. I like this ganging up on this weak, isolated pawn on a2.
Right.
h5. White figures, okay, that a2 pawn is a lost cause. I got to compensate it with some kind of attack. Takes, takes, take everything. And now how is this queen going to get involved? Bishop h2. I like this move. So the queen, maybe it's coming to g5 or h6, and maybe coupled with a rook swing like rook e3, rook h3, could give us some attack. Yeah, there we go.
Let's get the images of the players on the screen, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
All right. So what do we have here? Black has maintained his extra pawn. White has activated his rook, so black will need to remain vigilant here. So he's going to have to keep this queen close to the king side. That way white doesn't play something like queen c1, queen h6, and checkmate us. It's not clear how white is going to break through here, but maybe white could simply try to play along the dark squares with a move like queen b4. I'm not really threatening to take the pawn on c4 yet, because I have some back rank problems, right? If I go bishop takes c4, bishop takes, queen takes, rook a1, I'm going to have to give up my queen to avoid checkmate. So maybe I can just go queen b4 and prepare bishop takes c4 with something like bishop f4 or bishop g3. But I don't know. Here you might be able to activate your rook with rook a1.
Rook a1 looks pretty uncomfortable, actually.
Yeah. So maybe we should start with something like this, like bishop f4. And try to get the king out of the back rank so that when I go queen b4 and you go queen a1, rook a1, I can go bishop takes c4. So this could be an interesting idea. I think that white's position is not so bad. I think the bishop pair, especially this dark square bishop, should be enough to make up for that missing pawn. All right, so what other games do we have here?
So there are 3 games still in
Amin game
progress.
seems to have evolved quite a bit. Let's see. Where were we? Knight takes e5. Okay, so white took, bishop takes, queen takes a7, bishop f6. So black still up a piece for a pawn. Knight g6. Oh, wait a minute. This doesn't look so clear anymore. Did black just blunder this pawn on f7? That's kind of an important pawn too. Because if you go rook takes, which is what happened in the game, I take on b8, and these black pawns are really going down. I mean, I'm going to take probably e6, I'm going to take b6, and generally I like, the piece instead of the pawns, but if you give me enough pawns, you might convince me that the piece isn't worth it. So rook takes, knight e5, and now queen d6, rook d7. Oh, was this a blunder? Because I was liking white's position. It seemed like black had some king safety issues to boot. But now, after queen d6, we're going to have to deal with rook d1 check. And that doesn't look like a fun move to have to deal with.
I mean, could white survive that?
I mean, what would you play? Because your queen is kind of trapped too. I mean, let's say you go queen takes b6, then I go rook d1, and after bishop to f1, I mean, knight f3 would be the first move I look at. But after king g2, if I go queen h2 check, you go king f3, and you start running away with your king. I don't really see any devastating checks, so can I just threaten your bishop?
Oh my goodness.
So maybe you can go queen check, and now, I mean, after king up, you have to drop back with queen g2. But here, at the very least, I have a nasty discovery, right? Oh, nasty discovery, or nasty checkmate. I was going to take the rook on e6, then I realized, oh, I can just do mate in 2. Takes and checkmate, right? So, I'm thinking that white is just completely lost now. After
Well, and
we
have more moves on the board, and this looks like
yeah.
it's similar to what we've seen. Yeah.
Ouch! Look at this. Queen for a rook. That's not a good deal. So after rook d7, took on f6, took on d6, queen e2, check, and this looks like a matter of time, right? I mean, if king h2, I'm just going to go knight g4, right? And I'm going to take this pawn. And if you go bishop f1, if knight g4, maybe you can play rook f5. But if knight f3, king g2, knight f3, king g2, this looks like an annoying pattern to have to deal with, right? Look at this. Hitting your rook, threatening all sorts of discoveries on your king. This is a resignable position. I think this game is over.
I don't think that Bassam's going to be able to survive this.
No, I don't think so either. So
now, normally I would say let's talk to the winner of this game. Moklis Eladnani does not speak very good English.
what does he speak? French?
Yes, I mean, we could talk to him through a translator, but we couldn't really do any real analysis or anything. It'd just be general stuff.
We could talk to him, and I could give you my interpretation of what he's saying.
No, they have an interpreter over there.
Oh, really?
No,
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
bringing you into this.
Oh, man. All right.
But yeah, we're communicating with the folks over on Ivory Coast, seeing who would be good to talk to later on.
This is a big win for Moklis.
Absolutely, and that's why I kind of want to have him on.
Mm-hmm. So what other games are still going on? Let's check in on Andrew Kayonde. Oh, this game was eventually drawn. So after rook a6, now where is that rook? Oh, rook a5, bishop c7, rook a7, bishop d6, queen f6, queen c1. So yeah, it looks like black is just too tied down to the king side and to his queen side pawns to really make anything of his extra pawns, so they just repeated moves here, and the game was drawn. All right, and what else do we have?
So only one game left.
The Hadouche game
Yes,
is over?
Hadouche has won.
Okay, we knew that was going to happen.
So with one game left, it's Bassam Amin versus Moklis El Adnani.
This is the only game left.
The only one.
Okay. So what happened here? After queen e2, rook d5, queen check, bishop f1, knight f3. Oh, he went knight d2. I was looking at queen e4 here. But okay, knight d2, check, king f8, bishop c4, bishop b5, sorry, c4, king h3, queen e6, g4, queen h6, king g2, queen g5. So, whoa, these moves are just flying in. So after queen...
Well, they have to be. The players have less than 20 seconds.
Yeah, so the DGT board, sometimes they can't keep up
Right.
with the players. So rook d4, bishop's gone, rook takes. Wait a minute. Could this be a fortress for white? I mean, I don't think black can win this anymore. Trading that knight for that bishop wasn't a good idea.
You're right. Well, at least... Well, hold on. I can't get ahead of myself. It says draw right now, but...
They agreed to the draw. Wow, what a save by Amin. I mean, I thought his position was resignable a couple of moves ago.
It's... wow. Yeah. Well, should we talk to Amin, perhaps? How do Yeah, I think we should.
I mean, this is as good a moment as any.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's feeling pretty happy.
Now, the thing to mention about fortresses is that chess engines are almost always fooled by them. Because they're looking at material and they're looking at other things, but the fortress is just, the king can run and you just can't trap him. You can't put him away.
Yeah, and also just from a conceptual point of view, when you have little time, this is the best time to rely on general principles because you don't have time to think, so you have to make the move that looks good. And previously we were talking about how queen and knight are usually better than queen and bishop. So you can only imagine how queen and knight are better than rook and bishop. So we should try to keep queen and knight. Usually this is a very powerful attacking combo. So I think that black simply strayed here, thinking that, okay, I have an extra queen, the piece trades should help me. But in fact, piece trades can be your biggest enemy sometimes, you know? You get blinded by the fact that, okay, I trade pieces, I'm up a queen, and that's how fortresses happen. So instead of queen e6, pretty much any move. I even think that a move like knight e4 would have probably been winning. I have a little trick in mind that if you go bishop takes c4, queen h1, king g4, I can fork you, and we start seeing how important it was to keep the knight on the board. All right, so I guess all the games are over.
All the games are over, yeah. We're
Did we
with our friends
did we
over
miss
any
game that we didn't cover?
I think we looked at everything.
Yeah.
We glanced at the finish of Hadouche.
Yeah.
But we figured that would be a win for him, so I don't think we went to the end.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think it makes that much sense to... Well, why not? You never know what happens. Let me just run through this really quick. So after king h7, this is where we had left off. So the game didn't go too much longer. Knight d8, bishop e8, bishop e7. Look at this cluster of pieces. What's going on here? Bishop b5, knight takes. Okay, so black's position just collapsed. No surprises there. Okay, yeah. It's pretty much what we were expecting. Who are you going to get for our interview? Have you decided yet?
Well, I have decided. It looks like we are going to get Bassem Amin on the line first. So we're still working on that. The way that we're working with this, by the way, I'm calling via Skype the international arbiter Stefan Escafra. I think that's how you say his name.
You know, I played in a World Junior Championship a long time ago. It's like over 10 years ago. It was held in Yerevan, Armenia, and his fellow countryman, Adli Ahmed, was playing. And in the first round, we both got upset. We lost our games, and I figured, okay, I'm in good company. But then he won the tournament, and I still kept losing. So I think that's the first time I realized how good this guy was. All right, we got...
You're seeing it all here, folks.
What are you doing?
We are clipping on a microphone so we can hear our friends over here. Now, all right, I got the volume up. I'm going to turn my camera off. Yes, there it is. All right. We have the top seed in the tournament, Grandmaster Dr. Bassem Amin. You got out of this one just by the skin of your teeth, Bassem. First of all, welcome to the show. You got into this amazing fortress ending. What were your thoughts as you finished this game?
Well, I'm relieved, of course. It was totally lost position, and okay, I just kept fighting. Okay, I think my piece sacrifice in the opening was interesting, but maybe not enough compensation after all. And okay, once he castled and he took my pawn on e5, of course it's over. But then okay, he missed this rook f7 trick. I thought I'm back in the game, but again, after taking on f7, take on b8, king g7, I think the position is still very difficult because knight e5 and knight g4 are threats, and my king is a bit weak. And I was thinking to take e6 or b6 pawn. And then I said, okay, if I take on e6, he played knight e5, queen d6, like what I played. I thought that rook d7 is a blunder because I can take rook e5. But of course, when he played rook d7, I found that rook e5 is losing immediately against queen d1. Okay, then I had to sacrifice my queen. And
Can I jump in?
Absolutely. Robert, take it away.
Hi, Bassem. This is Grandmaster Robert Hungaski. We've been following your
Nice.
game.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff. Now, I'm aware that you're a bit of an expert in the King's Indian attack, so I wanted to ask you if you were familiar with this h6, g5 pawn sacrifice, because my understanding is that usually white tries to avoid playing e5 until black has castled kingside.
Yeah, that's correct.
And here, it seems like your opponent played quite well because he didn't castle too quickly, and then he was happy to trade his g-pawn for your e5 pawn. Was this
Yeah, this sacrifice actually is always working when black already castled. So it's always interesting because his king side is weak and bishop f4 is followed usually by bishop e4 and queen h5, stuff like that. So my attack is very dangerous. But now he didn't castle, so I thought this could still work. But okay, maybe after queen d5 I could play knight e4 not instead of d4, which is bad, I think. Bishop e4 or knight e4 could maybe give still some compensation because it's not easy for him to castle short or long.
Right,
because,
yeah.
Okay, my knight on g5 giving me some compensation because f7 pawn. And if he can't castle, then I always have some tricks on knight f7 or knight e6 and queen g4. Okay, I think I have compensation.
Yeah.
Actually, this was my initial idea, but then I saw d4, and I totally forgot he can take on g5. You know, I thought he have to play queen d3 or queen c4, then I moved queen g4 and bishop f1 straight to take with bishop and queen, and also queen g4, I have knight e6 straight, so I thought it's good. But I totally forgot he can take on g5, and after queen g5, I think it's just piece off.
Yeah, well, definitely a good defensive effort on your part. We were pretty much writing you off as losing that endgame, but then you got that fortress and came away with a very important half point. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bassem, how would you evaluate your performance in the tournament thus far?
Okay, of course, yesterday wasn't my best day, obviously. Okay, I think first round I played good. Second round, okay, against Haddouche, he's a very strong player. I think I had a slightly better ending, but okay, when we both entered, were playing on increment, I think we both had missed some chances to win. Okay, it was normal draw, and then okay, third round, of course, I played terrible in the opening, and I was just lost in the opening, I think. But okay, I still fought back and sacrificed a queen, and again, yeah, it seems I'm sacrificing a lot of queens this time. So yeah, so I was happy to not lose the third round yesterday. I think today, first two rounds I played decent games, and I won. Okay, last round, okay, maybe I took too much risk, but still I think I fought back well, and okay, not to lose such position is of course good news for me.
I have another question.
Go right ahead.
So, Bassem, I'm hoping that you can clear this doubt that we have. So it's Haddouche or Haddouche? How do you pronounce it? I'm embarrassed to ask him, so I'm going to ask you. That way, when we talk to him, we don't, pronounce it wrong.
Haddouche.
Haddouche. You were right this whole time, and I corrected you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Bassem, one last thing. You're coming into this tournament a couple hundred points higher rated than the next guy. Do you feel any additional pressure for this tournament because of that compared to others?
Yeah, of course, when you are favorite and everybody's expecting you to win every single game, which is not easy against a strong field. Also, I would like to mention that all African players are way underrated because they don't just play enough classical tournaments. So, yeah, I think the rating gap is just not so real because I think most of them, it could be at least 100 points more. So yeah, and it's okay in rapid and blitz format. Also, anything could happen. You know, you just blunder one move and you lose the game. So yeah, it's not easy. But okay, I'm trying my best, and okay, still one more rapid day and 2 blitz days to go, and I hope I can improve.
That was an excellent point about the ratings gap. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, we'll let you get some rest. Thank you for joining us, Bassem, and good luck tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's something a lot of people don't. Whoa, wait there. That's something a lot of people don't think about. There are pockets of people in different age groups, in geographical groups around the world that don't play in the amount of tournaments that people around here do in St. Louis, say.
Yeah, that's true. And generally speaking, young players are usually underrated because they're studying and playing the whole time, and it takes time for that rating to catch up with them. So anyone that's constantly working on their chess, you're going to find that they're underrated. Now, if you don't have access to tournaments, that just makes that underrated even more pronounced because you just don't have opportunities to let that rating catch up with you. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. And from what we've seen, I mean, we're talking about like 2,300 rated players that are pushing a 2,700 to the limits. So that says something, right?
There's some science behind it.
Is there?
We're seeing it in front of our eyes.
Okay,
So
I see the magic.
There's the magic's happening.
It is happening.
So while we are standing by to see if we're going to get anyone else, perhaps not today, let's take a look at the standings after 6 rapid rounds have been completed. Now, you will see it's not settled yet. 3 players with 9 points at the top. We're still in the stage of the game where all the games are worth 2 points. The Blitz on Friday and pardon me, the Blitz on Saturday and Sunday will be worth just 1 point. So it's important to establish dominance at this stage in the game. Thoughts on what you've seen so far, Robert?
Well, I think today was a big day for Bassem because not only did he win a couple of nice games, but he drew a completely hopeless position. And that can give you that, you know, sort of boost in your morale that you need to really go all the way in a tournament. Whenever you see somebody win a tournament, you hear this thing called, you know, champion's luck or winner's luck. And it's not like you won because you were lucky, but you were lucky at a critical point, and that was the turning point. You know, that's where you like clicked and everything started going your way, and you get that confidence to really trust your moves and not waste any opportunities. So I think this is probably the most important game of Bassem's that we've seen.
Bassem Amin versus Mokhlis Eladnani.
Yeah.
The draw.
Yeah, a draw. Because is Eladnani one of the leaders as well? I think I saw him up there. And this
is it possible to bring the standings back?
Because
up?
this game puts them, I think, tied with the same amount of points.
And there we see, one of the leaders.
So this was a huge game, because if Eladnani had won, he would have left Bassem trailing, and he would have seized the lead as well.
Clear first, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And considering this is the rapid portion, it's particularly important, because then when the Blitz comes, okay, it's not weighted as heavily.
Slim Belhodia still not on the board.
Yeah, I mean, that's very surprising. I think probably the most surprising thing of the tournament, that a grandmaster of Slim Belhodia's trajectory is having such a hard time.
Right.
And today, he was actually completely winning. I mean, do we have time to pull up that?
Yeah, sure,
that
bring
game?
it up.
He had played a great game. Let's see, it wasn't round 6. It was against Andrew Kayonde. So let me see.
It must be round 5, I believe.
Round 5? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So let's see. Round 5? Yeah, here's the game. Look at this. Belhodia is playing black, and he's got this tremendous pawn on e2, and all of a sudden, white plays this tactic. Queen takes c8, king takes c8, h7, and, I mean, this looks devastating. Looks like we don't have enough time to queen, because Now, white also queens, and after queen d8, for example, I think at the very least, white is going to win our queen and enter a queen and pawn endgame where white is just up 2 pawns, and one of these is probably going to queen. So when I first saw this, I was like, oh, win for white. But all of a sudden, black has this queen h6 move. The queen swings over to the other side of the board. And if you go check king c7, h8, I can just give up this queen and use this e2 pawn and pretty much seal the deal. Although, as we've seen, queen against rook might not seal the deal at all. I mean, we saw in the Amin game just now that things in rapid, and especially in blitz, anything can happen. But in this game, instead of going queen h6, black played e1 queen, and after h8, well, I think the game just ended after h8 queen, because black figured after queen d8, rook g8, and after king c7, I think there's a mating attack here. Rook takes f7, king c6. I don't know if there's mate, but at the very least, we can always gain this queen and enter a completely winning endgame. So, I don't think chess is the problem here. There's an element of bad luck as well, and maybe time pressure. And when you combine bad luck and time pressure, you get, dangerous cocktail.
Oddly enough, I didn't even think we mentioned it when we saw the standings earlier. The 3 players tied with 9 points at the very top are the top seeds.
Really?
The 3 top seeds, yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
So, yeah, we're talking about Amin, Hadoush, and El Adnani. So, in a way, unpredictable. In a way, predictable.
In every way. I mean, it's not like we have these calm games that, get crazy as we enter time trouble and then, there's blunders. I mean, the games are crazy right out of the gate. I mean, today was the first, quick draw we saw with that move repetition, but otherwise, all the games are chaotic.
Right. Well, that'll do it for today, for day number 2 of the 2018 Côte d'Ivoire Rapid and Blitz Invitational. This we'll be back with you tomorrow at the same time right here on chess24.com and on ChessBase. And remember, the rounds begin earlier than our broadcast does. So if you're watching in the States, the rounds will begin at 10 a.m. Central Time. That's 3 p.m. on the Ivory Coast. And we'll be on the air with you starting at 12:45 p.m. Central Time, 17:45 UTC. So be sure to check in. This is the last day, Rapid Round 3 tomorrow. It's the last day for the Rapids, and it's the last day that we start at this time. So stay tuned, and we'll have more information with you as we get closer. So this event was produced by the world's greatest production B-team. Tammy Hyde is the technical advisor. Isaac Schrantz is on graphics and audio. The technical director is Dennis LaRue. I'm Ben Simon.
I'm Robert Hungaski.
Oh, lovely. It's been a pleasure, sir. And until tomorrow, we say so long from the Show Me State.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.